the most beautiful love story of the widowed farmer and the forgotten daughter nobody wanted. Rashid had lived all his life in the quiet village of Marin. His days were filled with the routine of farming, tending to the small patch of land his father had left him, and caring for the few animals he owned. The village was peaceful, but his heart had not been for many years. Ever since his wife, Sarah, had passed away, life had felt hollow. Her laughter, the warmth of her hand in his, and even the little arguments they used to have, everything was gone, leaving only silence behind. Rashid carried on with his work, rising at dawn, plowing the fields, feeding the animals, and repairing fences. But each day ended with him sitting alone by the small fireplace in his modest home, thinking of what he had lost. Despite the grief that clung to him like morning fog, Rashid had a strong sense of responsibility. He knew he had to survive, not just for himself, but for the farm that had been in his family for generations. It was the life he had always known, and he threw himself into it, hoping the labor might quiet his restless mind. His neighbors respected him for his hard work, but few dared approach him. Some thought he was too serious, others too sad. Rashid didn't mind. He had learned to live with solitude. One early morning, as he walked to the village market carrying a small basket of vegetables he had grown himself, Rashid noticed a young girl sitting near the well. She was small, no more than 10 or 11 years old, with tangled hair that fell over her face and clothes that had seen better days. Her eyes were wide but wary, scanning the crowd as if expecting rejection at every turn. She held her hands close to her chest, and her feet barely touched the ground when she sat cross-legged. The villagers seemed to pass her by without a second glance. Some even muttered under their breath, assuming she was a troublemaker or someone who did not belong. Rashid felt a strange pull in his chest as he approached. He stopped a few steps away, quietly observing her. There was something about her that reminded him of the resilience of life itself, a stubborn spark that refused to die, even in hardship. "Hello," he said gently, unsure if she would even respond. The girl flinched slightly but did not run. She looked up at him with cautious eyes. "Hello," she replied in a small, almost whispering voice. Rashid smiled, holding up the basket. "I have some fresh vegetables." "Would you like some?" She hesitated, her gaze flickering between the basket and his eyes. No one had ever offered her anything without expecting something in return. Yet something in Rashid's calm demeanor made her nod slowly. He handed her a few carrots and a small bundle of spinach. Her fingers trembled as she took them, and Rashid could see the relief mixed with suspicion in her expression. "My name is Rashid," he said softly. "What's yours?" "Amina," she replied, her voice barely audible. Rashid nodded. "It's nice to meet you, Amina. Are you staying here in the village?" She shook her head. I live at the orphanage sometimes." Rashid felt a pang of sadness. He had heard about the orphanage, a small place where children with no family tried to make a life. Many of them were overlooked by the village, their voices unheard, their presence barely acknowledged. "Would you like to come with me for a moment?" he asked carefully. Amina looked at him, suspicion written on her face. No one usually invited her anywhere, and she had learned to trust no one. But Rashid's voice was gentle, free of any demand or urgency, and she found herself nodding. He led her to the edge of his farm, where the soil was soft and the air smelled of fresh earth. Birds sang in the trees, and the sound of a distant river added a gentle rhythm to the morning. Rashid crouched down and pointed to a small patch of carrots. "You can help me pick these if you like. It's simple work, and it keeps your hands busy." Amina studied him carefully but slowly stepped forward. She bent over the soil, her small fingers digging gently around the carrots. Rashid watched her, noticing how tentative her movements were at first, then how she relaxed as she realized he would not rush or scold her. They worked side by side in silence, and for the first time that day, Amina felt a small flicker of safety, something she had not experienced in a long while. Days turned into weeks. Rashid continued to allow Amina to spend time on the farm. He taught her how to feed the chickens, carry water from the well, and even how to tend to the soil before planting new seeds. At first, she was shy and hesitant, barely speaking. But gradually, she began to ask questions, her curiosity overcoming her fear. She learned how to identify different vegetables, how to tell if a plant needed water, and how to calm frightened animals. Rashid was patient, answering her questions and showing her without judgment. The villagers began to notice. Some whispered about the widowed farmer spending so much time with the orphan girl. Others frowned, questioning why Rashid, who had lost his wife, would take such interest in a child that was not his own. Rashid ignored the gossip. In his heart, he knew that helping Amina was the right thing to do. He saw the loneliness in her eyes, a reflection of the emptiness he had carried since his wife passed, and he wanted to offer what little comfort he could. Amina, in turn, began to trust him. Slowly, she started to share pieces of her story. Her parents had died when she was very young, and relatives had refused to care for her. The orphanage staff were kind, but they were overworked and could not give her the attention she needed. For the first time, she felt that someone genuinely cared about her, not because it was their duty, but because they wanted to. Rashid listened without interruption, never judging, never rushing her. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Rashid and Amina sat on the wooden bench outside his small house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Amina held a small bundle of carrots in her lap, and Rashid offered her a piece of bread. She smiled shyly, and for the first time in many years she felt warmth, not just from the food, but from a human connection that she had almost forgotten existed. "You know," Rashid said softly, "life is full of hard days, but it also gives us little moments that make it all worthwhile. Sometimes we just have to look closely to see them." Amina nodded, unsure how to respond, but inside she felt a strange comfort. She began to understand that not all adults were harsh, not all people abandoned those in need. Rashid, with his gentle words and patient ways, was proving her wrong, and it felt like hope was slowly growing in her heart. As the days continued, their bond deepened. Rashid began to feel something he had not felt since the death of his wife, a quiet joy in caring for someone else, in sharing knowledge, and in seeing a child bloom under his guidance. He realized that Amina was not just a lonely girl. She was resilient, smart, and kind, even if life had not treated her gently. And Amina realized that Rashid was more than a simple farmer. He was a man with a gentle heart, steady hands, and wisdom that came from experience and sorrow alike. The villagers began to notice subtle changes in both of them. Rashid's shoulders, once heavy with grief, now seemed lighter. Amina, once withdrawn and fearful, now smiled often, her laughter ringing softly across the fields. Though rumors and whispers never completely disappeared, the quiet strength of their bond began to speak louder than words. One morning, as Rashid prepared to leave for the market, Amina ran up to him, her small hand in his. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Rashid paused and looked at her. "You don't have to thank me, Amina. I'm glad you are here. You make the farm feel alive again." She looked down, cheeks slightly pink, and whispered, "I like being here, with you." Rashid smiled gently, realizing that their connection was no longer just about kindness. It was about trust, companionship, and the beginning of a bond that neither of them had expected but both needed deeply. That day, as Rashid worked in the fields and Amina played nearby, a soft wind blew across the farm. The sun shone warmly. Birds sang in the trees, and the two of them, a widowed man and a forgotten girl, felt, for the first time in years, that they were not entirely alone in the world. The first chapter of their story had begun, not with fanfare or recognition, but with quiet moments of care, small acts of trust, and the fragile but growing connection between two lonely hearts seeking comfort. It was a beginning that neither of them fully understood yet, but both felt it deep in their souls. And as the village moved around them, busy with its own affairs, Rashid and Amina created a little world of their own, a world where love, in its simplest and most beautiful form, quietly began to grow. The days passed slowly on Rashid's farm, yet each day brought small joys that neither he nor Amina had expected. The early mornings remained the same, birds singing softly, the smell of damp soil rising from the fields, and the quiet rhythm of chores that gave Rashid a sense of purpose. But now, with Amina beside him, even the hardest tasks felt lighter. She was no longer the shy, withdrawn girl who had first appeared at the village well. She was beginning to grow in confidence, her laughter occasionally spilling over as she helped feed the chickens or carried water for the garden. Rashid watched her carefully, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. He remembered how hesitant she had been at first, how she had flinched when anyone tried to touch her or speak too loudly. Now she moved with a careful grace, learning the ways of the farm and the rhythm of life in a place that had always demanded hard work. She was learning more than just planting seeds or mending fences. She was learning trust, patience, and the value of quiet companionship. One afternoon, while they were working in the carrot patch, Rashid noticed Amina staring at the soil in her small hands. "What's on your mind, Amina?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then looked up at him with eyes that were thoughtful and a little sad. I never had a place like this before," she said quietly. "No one cared if I did the chores right or if I fell while carrying water. I was just forgotten." Rashid felt a deep ache in his heart. He knelt beside her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not forgotten anymore," he said softly. "You're here, you matter, and I'm glad you are." Amina's lips curved slightly, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. For the first time in her life, someone's words matched their actions. Rashid didn't just say he cared. Every day, every small gesture showed her that she had a place, that she belonged. As the weeks turned into months, their bond deepened in ways that neither could fully describe. Rashid found himself looking forward to seeing Amina each day, and Amina began to feel a warmth inside that she had never known, a sense of security, of being valued, and of being seen. Together, they tended the fields, repaired fences, and cared for the animals, but there was something more than work that drew them together. A shared understanding that life could still offer moments of beauty, even after loss and neglect. Rashid often shared stories of his wife, Sarah, with Amina. He didn't speak of her with bitterness or sorrow alone. He spoke of her kindness, her laughter, and the small ways she had made life better. At first, Amina listened silently, absorbing each detail like a sponge. Then slowly she began to ask questions. What Sarah's favorite flower had been, what songs she liked to hum, what dreams she had held. Rashid answered patiently, telling the stories with a soft smile, allowing Amina to feel connected to a part of his past that had been painful but precious. One evening, after the work was done, Rashid and Amina sat outside by the small fire he kept for warmth. The sky was painted with deep shades of orange and purple, and the first stars began to twinkle above. Amina had her small notebook open, a rare gift she had received from a kind neighbor, and she was sketching the farm as she saw it. "You draw very well," Rashid said quietly, noticing the care in each line. Amina looked up, surprised. "You really think so?" "I do," he replied. "It reminds me that beauty can grow even in the simplest places. And in the hands of someone who cares, even a small farm like this can feel like a world." She smiled shyly, feeling a sense of pride she had never felt before. In her past, there had been no one to notice her efforts, no one to encourage her, and certainly no one who believed in her. But Rashid did, and slowly, that belief began to shape her self-esteem, giving her courage to try new things, speak up, and explore her own potential. Life was not without its challenges, of course. The village was small, and people noticed the unusual relationship between the widowed man and the young girl. Some whispered, questioning why Rashid spent so much time with Amina, while others simply shook their heads. But Rashid ignored the gossip. He knew that what he shared with Amina was not for show, and it was certainly not for approval. It was for the quiet joy of caring, teaching, and protecting a child who had been overlooked. One morning, a minor crisis tested the bond they had formed. A sudden summer storm swept across the village, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. Rashid's small barn, which sheltered the animals, suffered damage, and several of the younger animals panicked. Amina, who had learned to remain calm in difficult situations, helped Rashid gather the frightened animals, leading them to a safer corner of the farm. Rashid marveled at her courage and calmness, recognizing how far she had come from the frightened child he had first met at the market. After the storm passed, they worked together to repair the barn. Rashid guided Amina in tying the beams securely and arranging the hay to protect the animals. They laughed at small mistakes and celebrated small successes, and in those moments, the farm felt less like a place of labor and more like a sanctuary. They were learning together, growing together, and the bond between them strengthened with each shared challenge. Evenings often became moments of reflection. Rashid would tell stories of his own childhood, teaching Amina lessons about resilience, kindness, and patience. He spoke of how his father had once faced droughts and crop failures, yet had persevered with determination and faith. Amina listened intently, absorbing the lessons not as lectures, but as guides for navigating the difficulties she had already faced and would face in the future. Amina, too, began sharing parts of herself she had never revealed before. She spoke of her dreams, to one day help children who were alone, to plant a garden of her own, to learn skills that would allow her to live independently but never alone. Rashid listened, encouraging her to dream big, reminding her that no matter what had happened in the past, the future was something they could shape together. Over time, the villagers began to notice a change too. Rashid was no longer the quiet, somber widower they had once pitied. There was a light in his eyes, a gentleness in his actions, and a quiet joy that could not be ignored. And Amina, once the silent, withdrawn girl, now walked taller, smiled more freely, and even spoke to neighbors who had previously dismissed her. Their bond was no longer a secret, though it remained private in many ways. People saw the love, care, and respect they shared, and slowly, even the skeptics began to soften. One day, as Rashid worked in the fields, Amina approached him holding a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked from the edge of the farm. "These are for you," she said shyly, offering the colorful mix of petals. Rashid knelt down, smiling warmly. "Thank you, Amina. They're beautiful, just like the care you put into everything you do here." Her face lit up, a mixture of pride and happiness, and in that moment, Rashid realized that their relationship had become something far deeper than companionship or mentorship. It was a connection built on trust, respect, and a quiet understanding that life could be gentle even after sorrow. By the end of the year, the farm had transformed as much as the two who lived there. The soil was fertile, the animals were thriving, and the vegetables grew in abundance. More importantly, Rashid and Amina had cultivated something far more precious than crops or livestock, a sense of family, love, and belonging that neither had expected but both desperately needed. At night, when the wind rustled the trees and the moon cast a soft glow across the fields, Rashid would look at Amina sleeping peacefully in her small bed beside the farmhouse. He felt a deep gratitude that life had brought her into his world. And Amina, curling up under her blanket, felt the first real sense of safety she had ever known. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be cared for, to be seen, and to be loved, not as an obligation but as a gift freely given. And so, the days continued. Each morning brought new tasks: Each evening brought quiet reflection, and between the work and the rest, a beautiful, slow-growing bond took root. Rashid and Amina were no longer two lonely souls wandering in the world. They were a team, a family in the making, learning how to heal, grow, and love again. The foundation of something extraordinary had been laid, and while neither of them could see the full path ahead, both knew that life, for the first time in many years, felt full of hope and quiet joy. The seasons changed on Rashid's farm, bringing with them the gentle rhythm of life. Spring followed winter, painting the fields with fresh green shoots, and summer's warmth ripened the fruits of their labor. Rashid and Amina had settled into a routine, one that was peaceful and fulfilling, yet full of quiet discoveries. Their days began at sunrise, with the sound of birds and the smell of freshly turned soil, and ended with soft, twilight conversations beside the fire. Over time, the connection between them had grown stronger, deeper, and more meaningful. Amina was no longer the timid, withdrawn girl who had appeared at the market months ago. She had grown taller, more confident, and her smile now came easily. Rashid noticed the changes with quiet pride. Her curiosity had flourished alongside her skills. She asked questions about the farm, the animals, and even about life itself. Sometimes she would pause and watch him working in the fields, her expression thoughtful. It was clear she was learning more than farming. She was learning the art of patience, responsibility, and compassion, all under the quiet guidance of a man who had endured loss yet never lost his heart. Rashid, too, felt subtle changes within himself. He realized that caring for Amina had awakened a part of him he thought was lost forever. The loneliness that had haunted him since his wife's death now seemed less heavy, replaced by a warm, steady joy. He had learned to find happiness in simple moments: the sound of Amina's laughter, the sight of her carefully watering plants, or the quiet satisfaction when a task was completed successfully. In many ways, she had brought life back into the farm and, more importantly, into his heart. One afternoon, while they were working near the orchard, Amina tripped over a small stone and fell. Rashid rushed to her side, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked, gently brushing the dirt from her sleeve. "I'm fine," she said, though a small grimace betrayed her words. Rashid smiled softly, lifting her hand. "Be careful, Amina. Life is full of small stones, but each fall teaches us to step more carefully. And remember, I'm always here if you need help." Amina's heart fluttered. She realized how much she had come to rely on his presence, not just for guidance or protection, but for reassurance. There was a warmth in his voice, a steady calm that made her feel safe in a world that had often been harsh and uncaring. She had never experienced such gentle care before, and it made her begin to see Rashid not just as a mentor or guardian, but as someone deeply trustworthy, someone whose presence brought peace to her restless mind. As weeks passed, Rashid began sharing more of his personal thoughts and memories with her. One evening, they sat beneath the old oak tree at the edge of the farm, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold as the sun began to set. Rashid spoke of his wife, Sarah, and the dreams they had shared. He recounted small stories, how she had insisted on planting marigolds along the path, how she had loved to hum a simple tune while cooking, how she had always encouraged him to keep hope alive even in difficult times. Amina listened intently, her eyes wide and reflective. "She must have been very kind," she said softly. "She was," Rashid replied, his voice tinged with both love and sorrow. "She taught me that life is not only about surviving, it's about noticing the beauty in small things, about caring for others, and about never giving up, even when things seem impossible." Amina thought about her own life, about the times she had felt invisible and unwanted. In that moment, she understood something powerful. Kindness, care, and love could exist even after heartbreak, even after loss. And Rashid, in his quiet strength, was teaching her that those qualities could heal wounds she had thought permanent. Their bond was also noticed by the villagers, though opinions remained divided. Some were skeptical of the unusual closeness between the widowed man and the young girl, while others quietly admired the changes in both of them. Rashid ignored whispers and stares, focusing instead on the life he was building with Amina. It was a life built on trust, respect, and understanding, not approval or recognition. One day, a neighboring farmer came to seek Rashid's advice on irrigation techniques. Amina accompanied him, carrying a notebook filled with sketches and observations about the farm. The farmer glanced at the girl and then at Rashid, nodding with approval. "She seems very clever," he said. "It's good to see a child learning so much from someone who cares." Amina felt a warm pride, realizing that her efforts were being seen, not just by Rashid but by others as well. Rashid smiled at her quietly, a gentle encouragement passing between them without words. It was moments like these that reinforced the sense of belonging and purpose that had begun to bloom in her heart. The bond between them deepened further during times of quiet reflection. Rashid often invited Amina to sit beside him in the evening, sharing stories about the stars, the seasons, and the history of the village. He encouraged her to dream, to imagine, and to believe in herself. Amina began to speak more freely about her hopes, learning new skills, helping others, and even one day creating a home of her own. Rashid listened patiently, nodding and guiding, never pushing, never judging. But as their emotional connection grew, so did a subtle, unspoken understanding between them. Rashid noticed the way Amina's eyes lit up when she discovered something new, the way her laughter resonated across the fields, and the way she had become an inseparable part of his daily life. He realized that the affection he felt for her had grown beyond simple guardianship. It was a quiet, steady love, one that was protective and deeply caring, yet unspoken. Amina, too, began to sense her own feelings shifting. She admired Rashid's strength, his patience, and the kindness that seemed to pour from him in everything he did. She felt comfort in his presence, and a strange sense of happiness that she had never known before. But she also felt confusion, unsure how to define the deep admiration and care that had taken root in her heart. It was a gentle, blossoming emotion that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day, leaving her both curious and cautious. Their connection was tested one late summer afternoon when a minor injury threatened to unsettle their routine. While climbing a small hill to check on the irrigation channels, Amina slipped and twisted her ankle. Rashid rushed to her side, supporting her carefully. He carried her down the slope and gently set her on the farmhouse porch. "You must be more careful," he said softly, worry in his eyes, "but you did very well trying to help." Amina looked up at him, her heart racing. I didn't want to slow you down," she said. "You never slow me down," Rashid replied gently. "You make my days brighter, Amina. That's more important than anything else." Amina's cheeks flushed, and she realized that her feelings for him were no longer simple admiration or gratitude. They were deeper, complex, and confusing, but comforting at the same time. Rashid, too, felt an emotional stir he hadn't expected, a mixture of care, protection, and a quiet joy at having her in his life. Evenings became filled with small, meaningful moments. They would sit together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, talking about everything and nothing. Rashid would teach her songs he remembered from childhood, while Amina shared sketches of the farm, birds, and flowers. In the warmth of their shared space, both began to understand that love could take many forms, not only as family, not only as friendship, but as a deep, abiding connection between two souls who had been lonely and lost. The villagers began to notice these subtle changes in both of them. Rashid was no longer seen as the lonely widower who had merely survived his loss. He was now admired for his patience, his care, and the way he had nurtured Amina's growth. And Amina, once overlooked and forgotten, had become a young girl full of confidence, laughter, and quiet intelligence. Together, they formed a small but undeniable unit, a living example of the transformative power of kindness, care, and love. By the end of that year, the farm was flourishing. Crops were healthy, animals were thriving, and the bond between Rashid and Amina had grown into something unspoken yet undeniable. Rashid had found new purpose and joy, and Amina had discovered a sense of belonging she had never thought possible. Together, they had built not only a home but a life filled with quiet beauty, trust, and a growing, unbreakable connection. And so, as the sun set on another day at the farm, Rashid and Amina sat quietly under the old oak tree, hands occasionally brushing, hearts slowly understanding the depth of their bond. The warmth of the fading sunlight wrapped around them, and in the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds, they both felt a quiet truth. Life had given them something precious, something neither had expected, but both had come to need deeply. In the gentle bloom of love and trust, they found a joy neither words nor time could fully capture, a love that was patient, gentle, and beautifully real. Life on the farm had settled into a peaceful rhythm, yet the quiet happiness Rashid and Amina shared could not fully escape the eyes of the village. As much as the villagers had grown to respect Rashid for his patience and hard work, and admire Amina for her intelligence and resilience, not everyone accepted the closeness they shared. Whispers traveled through the lanes, gossiping about the unusual relationship between a widowed man and the young girl who had been forgotten by everyone else. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some even disapproving. One morning, while Rashid was tending the livestock and Amina was watering the vegetables, a man from the village approached. His expression was stern, and there was a tension in the air that immediately made Amina anxious. Rashid noticed her unease and offered a calm smile. "Don't worry, Amina," he said quietly. "We'll handle this together." The man introduced himself as a distant relative of Amina's, someone who had heard of her presence on Rashid's farm. He claimed that the girl should be living under the care of her family and that Rashid had no right to keep her so close. Rashid listened patiently, his jaw tight but calm. "Amina is safe, and she is learning, growing, and cared for here," he said firmly. "She is happy, and that is what matters most." Amina's small hand found Rashid's, gripping it tightly. The strength she felt in his presence steadied her nerves. She had feared being sent away, being forgotten again, and losing the life she had just begun to build. Rashid's calm reassurance reminded her that she was not alone, and that together they could face whatever challenges came their way. The relative refused to accept Rashid's words and went to the village council, hoping to take Amina into his care. When the council convened, many villagers spoke, some supporting Rashid and the girl, others questioning the unusual situation. Rashid remained quiet for most of the meeting, letting his work, character, and the evident bond he shared with Amina speak for him. He did not argue harshly or raise his voice. He simply presented the truth, that Amina was safe, cared for, and thriving. Amina, who had once been shy and hesitant to speak in public, surprised everyone. She stood quietly beside Rashid and told the council what she felt. I want to stay here," she said softly, her voice trembling but clear. "Rashid has taught me so much. He cares for me. I feel safe here. I don't want to leave." Her words caused a pause in the council. The villagers looked at her, seeing not a fragile child, but a young girl who had found courage and a voice. Rashid placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, smiling gently. In that moment, he realized that Amina had grown stronger than he had imagined. She was not just his responsibility, she was his equal in strength, resilience, and heart. After much discussion, the council allowed Amina to stay on the farm under Rashid's care. While some villagers remained skeptical, others began to see the truth in the quiet strength of their bond. It was a victory, yes, but one that reminded both Rashid and Amina that life would continue to test them in different ways. In the weeks that followed, life returned to its rhythm, yet the experience left a lasting mark on both of them. Rashid became more aware of the responsibilities he carried, not just in farming or caring for Amina, but in protecting her from those who might not understand the depth of their relationship. Amina, meanwhile, learned the power of speaking up, of trusting her instincts, and of believing in herself. Their bond had been tested, and it had emerged stronger and more resilient. The challenges were not only external. There were moments when Amina struggled with her own fears and doubts. She sometimes questioned whether she deserved the happiness she had found, whether she could ever truly belong after being abandoned for so long. Rashid noticed these moments and addressed them gently, never dismissing her feelings, never rushing her through them. "It's okay to feel uncertain," he would say. "What matters is that you keep moving forward and that you know you are loved, valued, and safe." Their days continued to be filled with work, learning, and small joys. Rashid taught Amina how to read the patterns of the weather, how to tend the soil to ensure healthy crops, and how to care for each animal individually. Amina, in turn, contributed ideas about improving the farm, suggesting new ways to plant or feed the animals. Together, they became a team in the truest sense, learning from each other, supporting each other, and sharing the rewards of their labor. One evening, as they sat outside watching the stars emerge, Amina spoke softly. "Rashid, do you think people can really change?" she asked, her voice tinged with hope and doubt. Rashid looked at her, his eyes reflecting the light of the stars. "People can change if they are willing to see the truth, to open their hearts, and to understand the value of kindness. And sometimes, change comes not from force, but from quiet examples, like how we treat each other every day." Amina nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She realized that their life together was more than just a shelter or a farm. It was a lesson in love, patience, and resilience. It was proof that kindness could transform not only individuals, but also the world around them, even if only in small, quiet ways. Yet life had more lessons for them to learn. One late autumn day, a serious illness struck one of the animals on the farm, a young calf that had been weak since birth. Rashid and Amina worked tirelessly to care for it, administering medicine, keeping it warm, and ensuring it had food and water. The villagers watched their dedication, some offering help, others silently observing. The ordeal tested their patience, resilience, and cooperation. Amina stayed by Rashid's side for hours, her small hands steady as she followed his instructions, and Rashid admired her courage and determination. After days of care, the calf began to recover. Rashid knelt beside it, a proud smile on his face. "See, Amina. Hard work, patience, and love make all the difference," he said. Amina's eyes sparkled. "We did it together," she whispered. "Yes," Rashid replied, his heart full. "Together we can face anything." That evening, as they sat by the fire, Rashid reflected on the journey they had shared so far. From the first day he had met Amina at the market, through the months of teaching, learning, and caring, they had grown inseparable. She was no longer the frightened, forgotten girl, and he was no longer the lonely widower consumed by grief. Together, they had built a life rooted in trust, respect, and an unspoken understanding that they were stronger together than apart. Amina, too, felt a deep gratitude for the life she had found. She thought of her past, the loneliness, the fear, and the sense of being unwanted, and realized that those experiences had brought her to Rashid. She had learned to value herself through his unwavering care, and to trust that love, patience, and consistency could heal even the deepest wounds. The bond between them, though sometimes challenged by external forces or life's difficulties, remained unbroken. Each trial had only strengthened it, teaching them the power of loyalty, trust, and quiet courage. Rashid had become more than a mentor or guardian. He was a pillar of strength, a source of comfort, and a constant presence in her life. And Amina had become more than a pupil. She was a companion, a helper, and a young girl with a heart brave enough to trust and to love. As winter approached, the farm prepared for the cold months ahead. Rashid and Amina worked together to store food, secure the barn, and ensure that the animals were warm and safe. Each evening, they would sit together, sharing stories, dreams, and hopes for the future. Though the world beyond the farm could be harsh and judgmental, the sanctuary they had built for themselves was filled with warmth, safety, and love. In the quiet of the winter nights, Rashid often thought of the future. He knew that challenges would continue to arise, relatives, village opinions, and the inevitable hardships of life. But he also knew that with Amina by his side, they could face whatever came. Their love, built on trust, patience, and shared experiences, was strong enough to endure both the whispers of the world and the hardships of life itself. Amina, too, felt a growing sense of confidence and purpose. She no longer feared being alone or forgotten, and she knew that the bond she shared with Rashid was real, steadfast, and unshakable. Through every storm, every trial, and every moment of doubt, they had learned that love was not simply a feeling. It was action, effort, and the choice to care for another person every single day. And so, as the first snow fell softly on the farm, covering the fields in a blanket of white, Rashid and Amina sat together on the porch, hands occasionally brushing, hearts quietly understanding the depth of their connection. Life had tested them, pushed them, and challenged them in ways neither had expected. Yet, through every difficulty, they had remained together, proving that love, trust, and courage could overcome obstacles, heal old wounds, and create a family where none had existed before. Winter slowly gave way to spring, and with it, the farm awakened once again. The fields that had lain dormant beneath the snow began to sprout fresh shoots of green, and the animals, safe and warm through the cold months, moved about with renewed energy. Rashid and Amina stood together at the edge of the orchard, watching the sun rise over the hills, the golden light spilling across the land. Life felt full and calm, yet they both knew that the peace they had found had been hard-earned, shaped by months of trust, care, and shared challenges. Amina moved beside Rashid, her hands clasped in front of her. She was no longer the shy, hesitant girl who had first wandered into the market that day. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her eyes bright with curiosity and determination. "The farm looks beautiful," she said softly, her voice reflecting pride and happiness. "All our work, it really paid off." Rashid smiled, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Yes," he said, his voice warm and steady, "but it's not just the work that makes it beautiful. It's everything we've built together, our care for each other, the love we've put into this place, and the life we've shared." Amina felt a deep warmth in her chest. For years she had been abandoned, overlooked, and forgotten, but here, on this small farm, she had found something extraordinary: a home, a purpose, and someone who truly cared for her. Rashid had not only given her guidance and safety, but he had also shown her that life could hold joy, hope, and love, even after loss. The villagers, who had once whispered and watched skeptically, now greeted Amina and Rashid with smiles and respect. They admired the way the girl had grown under Rashid's care, and the way he had nurtured her without expectation or judgment. Slowly, the small community began to recognize the bond between them for what it truly was: a love built on patience, kindness, and mutual respect. One afternoon, a neighboring farmer approached Rashid with an invitation. "We're holding a small festival in the village to celebrate the coming of spring," he said. "It's a chance for everyone to gather and share their work, their food, and their stories. You and the girl should come. You've done so much for this land, it's time people see it." Rashid hesitated for a moment, looking at Amina. Her eyes shone with excitement and a little nervousness. "We should go," she whispered. "It's a chance for everyone to see that we belong here." And so, they attended the festival together. Rashid carried a basket of vegetables and freshly baked bread, while Amina helped decorate the stand with flowers and small sketches of the farm. Villagers gathered, some curious, some admiring, but all attentive. When people saw Amina's confidence, her skill in presenting their produce, and the warmth between the two of them, whispers of doubt faded. It became clear to everyone that their bond was genuine, built on years of care, respect, and love. After the festival, Rashid and Amina walked home together, their hands brushing occasionally, smiles soft and content. "I never imagined life could feel like this," Amina said quietly. "I feel safe, happy, loved." Rashid looked at her, emotion filling his eyes. "And I never imagined I could feel this way again. You've brought life back into this farm and into my heart. You've taught me patience, joy, and the quiet power of caring for someone with all your heart." Amina's cheeks flushed slightly, a gentle warmth spreading through her. She realized that what she felt for Rashid was no longer just admiration or gratitude. It was a deep, abiding love, a recognition of the man who had stood by her, guided her, and shown her that she mattered. And Rashid, in turn, recognized that his affection for her had grown into something profound, protective, gentle, and unwavering. As the seasons continued to change, Rashid and Amina's life flourished. The farm became a thriving, vibrant place, a reflection of the love and care they poured into it every day. Crops grew strong, animals were healthy and content, and the small farmhouse became a warm and welcoming home. But more than the tangible signs of growth, it was the emotional life they shared that truly blossomed. The quiet joy of companionship, the comfort of trust, and the strength of a bond that had been tested and proven unbreakable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky with shades of pink and gold, Rashid and Amina sat on the porch, watching the light fade. The world felt peaceful, yet vibrant, as if life itself were celebrating the love they had nurtured. Amina leaned her head against Rashid's shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "You know," Rashid said softly, "life is full of challenges, but it's also full of moments like this, moments that make everything worth it. Moments where we realize that love, care, and patience can create something truly beautiful." Amina nodded, feeling tears of happiness welling in her eyes. "I never thought anyone would care for me like this," she whispered. "I never thought I would have a home, a family, a life worth looking forward to." Rashid placed a gentle hand on hers. "You do, and we've created it together. You are not alone anymore, Amina. You never will be." As the stars appeared overhead, twinkling softly in the night sky, Rashid and Amina sat quietly, holding hands, hearts full. They had faced loss, loneliness, and doubt, yet through patience, trust, and unwavering care for one another, they had built a life filled with love. The farm was no longer just a place of work. It was a home, a sanctuary, and a symbol of the life they had chosen to create together. In the days that followed, Amina began to help other children in the village who felt lost or overlooked. Inspired by Rashid's patience and guidance, she shared her knowledge of farming, reading, and life skills, becoming a source of hope for others. Rashid watched her, proud and moved, realizing that their love and care had not only healed themselves but had begun to touch the lives of those around them. The villagers, once skeptical, now embraced the pair wholeheartedly. They admired the dedication, respect, and love that Rashid and Amina shared, recognizing that family was not always defined by blood, but by the bonds we nurture with care and kindness. The whispers of doubt had faded, replaced by admiration, respect, and acceptance. Years passed and the farm continued to flourish. Rashid and Amina grew together, not just as companions, but as a family built on love, trust, and shared dreams. Their bond, tested by life's trials and strengthened through challenges, remained steadfast. Each day was filled with small joys, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection, reminders of the journey they had taken from loneliness and loss to happiness and fulfillment. On a warm spring evening, as the sun set and cast a golden glow across the fields, Rashid and Amina stood together, surveying the farm that had grown with them. The vegetables were thriving, the animals content, and the farmhouse stood sturdy and welcoming. But more than the tangible signs of their labor, it was the life they had built, the love, trust, and companionship that truly shone. Amina turned to Rashid, her eyes bright. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything, for seeing me, for teaching me, for loving me." Rashid smiled, emotion shining in his eyes. "And thank you, Amina, for reminding me that life can be beautiful, even after sorrow. You've brought joy back into my heart and shown me the true meaning of love." Hand in hand, they walked through the fields, the soft breeze carrying the scent of flowers and fresh earth. Their hearts were full, their bond unbreakable, and their lives intertwined in a way that had been built patiently, lovingly, and with unwavering care. They had found in each other a family, a home, and a love that was quiet yet powerful, simple yet extraordinary. And as the sun disappeared behind the hills, leaving the sky awash with stars, Rashid and Amina knew that they had created something lasting, a life filled with love, a home full of warmth, and a bond that could withstand the tests of time. They were no longer a widowed farmer and a forgotten girl. They were a family, together, whole and deeply happy.